Good afternoon and welcome to You and Your Business with me, Alec on 103.2 Dublin City FM. Each week I invite an expert from the world of business to share their knowledge, insights and tips to help you with your business challenges. If there's a topic you would like covered or if you feel that you can make a contribution, please email me at yourbusiness@dublincityfm.ie and perhaps we'll be chatting here one day soon. My guest today has had an extraordinary career spanning 6 decades, from humble beginnings to working for major corporations across Africa. And his unique story is typified by the fact that he met his wife Fiona at a ceilidh in Malawi, of all places, in a 2-part interview, which is totally different, broadcast over this week and next. I'm sure you will enjoy the fascinating business and life lessons from my guest today, Michael Armitage. Hiya, Michael.
Hi, Alec.
Wow, that's a great introduction and spread over 2 weeks. I know this could have been spread over 4, having talked with you before, but we do have certain limitations. But I don't think I'm too far off the mark if I could describe you at 18 in your sort of school days. Was the word lazy, did that come to mind at all?
Yes, it did. I mean, I took the course of least resistance.
Right.
You know, I found I had a natural aptitude for certain things. I could memorize things, I could do things.
Right.
Certain areas. And so I passed a couple of exams without doing too much. But when I was at school as well, is one of the things happened, the only subject I passed was one subject at junior certificate level, first time. That happened. Right. But I didn't understand maths until I was about 13, 14.
Right.
I happened to have a very good school teacher that I seemed to connect with.
Right.
And he was then able to give me an understanding of maths. Because one of the things I've found is that you need to have understandings of things that helps you with your learning as well. Because heading back to even before 18, my parents sent me to a primary school that had the worst record in town.
Right, okay.
People did not pass the 11 plus exam to go on to grammar school from here. When my brother took the exams, nobody in the school passed the exam whatsoever.
Right.
But they said that what you learned there was not how to pass exams, but what life was about.
Okay, well, there's something good about that, I'm sure.
And so I picked up from all of that as well. And at that school as well, at primary school, they gave you a bit of an understanding of things. You didn't just learn 1 + 1 = 2 and this and all. They gave you an understanding, put it into different settings. Let's be at a shop, let's do things, whatever else. So they put it into practicalities for life.
Right.
So I've always done that and viewed that through all my life, is try to make sure I get an understanding of what things are about. Then that helps me learn things.
Yeah, put them into context. I think that's a very important thing to understand.
Yeah, and when I was at school, you get influenced by various things. You have all these various friends and other people around you. You bunk off school, which we did. We found it a lot easier. You just clock into school, then you head off down to the local cafe because they had the jukebox with the latest records.
Right.
You could then later on impress people that you knew the words and the song and things like this on it. So that's why I only passed 1 exam first time. But I was also a bit of a stubborn bugger.
Right.
And they put you in school into a class called Fifth Law Remove. Remove being, i.e., you've got to leave the school.
All right.
But I said, no, I didn't want to leave. I want to continue. I didn't just want to have 1 exam. I wanted to continue and get a bit more. So I was the first pupil in the school who continued on after Fifth Law Remove disintegrated. And I continued on, and eventually I got 6 subjects at junior certificate level, but it took me 4 attempts to get that.
All right, okay. But you have a record anyway.
Yes. So I then went on, and at 18, here I was deciding what should I be doing. I was a grass cutter in an industrial estate. My parents were sort of working class. My family was sort of in the construction industry. My dad was a joiner. And you learn certain things from him as well. I always remember everybody's probably heard it, measure once, you measure twice, cut once.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad also put it into again as think again, think twice and then do something, which helps. But
yeah.
I was there 18 and wondering what to do. And your head gets turned because I'd been in the Scouts and I'd been in first aid competitions. We'd won competitions. My uncle was in the British Railways first aid team and he'd won competitions. And I found I enjoyed medicine and first aid. So you naturally think, well, let me go off. Let me head off into medicine.
Right, okay.
And so I applied to head off into medicine and failed miserably because I didn't have the exam qualifications. You know, it's that situation where you've got to get 600 points, you know, kind of situation like now here.
Yes.
They don't consider actually the person, his personality or what his background is and what perhaps he might be useful and good at. You know, get back to that first point I said is, you know, you learn at school how to pass exams. You don't learn about life.
And that's very valid. And I mean, so many good doctors have no personality.
Yes. So I did head off and I decided, well, let me do perhaps a degree or something else, you know, related to medicine. So I did a degree in applied biology. But unfortunately, I was applying too much biology and my girlfriend became pregnant. And one of the things that, you know, I was taught was that you accept the responsibilities that go with your actions. You know, so we got married. So here it was, sort of 19, girlfriend 17, married. And I failed my exams on my BSc, my first year exams. My parents didn't have the money to send me because I was on a full 100% grant and they wouldn't give me a grant to resit exams. So I became a painter's labourer.
And how did you find that?
I found that quite easy to do because I'd worked out that to scrape the paint off metal windows, you scrape down, not up. Most people's inclination is to scrape up. If I scraped down, I found the paint off came off a lot quicker. So I was more efficient than anybody else. And because I was efficient, the foreman said, look, you've got all these windows done now, but I'm a bit short on painters. Why don't you just stick an undercoat on?
Right.
So, yeah, sure. So I picked up the paintbrush. 3 seconds later, the whole site was down. The union said, the guy is not a painter, he's only a labourer, we're out.
Demarcation.
Yeah, so I caused a strike on the site.
All right, so what next for Michael?
Well, then my mother, you know, as usual, we take advice from our parents. And my mum said to me, look, Mike, you know, you've got a few qualifications behind you, you know, when you went to school. Here's some forms, join the civil service. You know, when you join the civil service, 2 things. You're guaranteed you pay every month and you get a pension when you retire. So I said, well, sounds like an easy option.
Right.
So I applied to join the civil service and they sent me down to London. I was, with my accent, you can gather I'm from the north of England. And I went down to London and went into this office. And my predecessor had been taken out of the job because he couldn't handle the workload.
All right.
And the way they did it there was they measured you on the day's post that came in. As the day's post came in, it stacked up in front of you. And if you had more than 10 days post in front of you, then you weren't considered suitable for the job or you weren't suitable for any promotion or anything. But I then had a look at this and said, well, hang on a minute. They're not measuring me on the files on my desk. So let me take the day's post, put it in all the files and have all the files around me on the desk. Then I've got no day's post in front of me. Within 2 days, the office thought I was a miracle worker because I've got no day's post in front of me. But that also then made me realize that you've got to be very specific in what you measure. The right thing.
Yeah.
Because that came in useful later on, because when I did go to a client a bit later on, they had a salesman's commission that they were giving out to them, and they'd wonder why after 2 years, their sales had remained static at 2 million a year for the last 2 years, even they'd got this fancy bonus scheme in place for the salesman. And I said, you're measuring the wrong thing. You need to add this and do that. So with a change, I added 5 words to their bonus scheme, and within 3 months, they got a 5% increase in commission. Because what happens is that by nature, you know, we're driven and we sort of work how we're directed, and a bonus and commission scheme or measurement directs you how to work.
Right. And do you remember those 5 words you added?
Yes, I do. the basic 5 words were, sort of whilst also sort of, keeping existing clients.
Right.
So that's what changed it round, just by doing that and doing that one small change. But yeah, getting back to this, so there I was in the civil service, bored to death. Because for me, for some reason, I need something else in my brain going on other than just paper. I needed to, and I started to look at this and I saw figures and I said, that looks interesting. Here's accounts and things. Because getting back to my youth again, when I was sort of, teenage years, sort of you think to yourself, girls are out there. How do I get to meet them? How do I? And I was in the youth fellowship on a Sunday evening, and I wasn't getting very far chatting to the ladies and doing stuff because I'm a natural introvert and a very shy person. And I saw, look at that, the treasurer. People approach the treasurer and pay that person the money. And they then said they needed a treasurer for it. I became the treasurer. And now what happened, instead of me approaching the young ladies, all the young ladies approached me. And I found that was an easy method for me then to start talking. I've got a natural barrier that I just shut up, clam up, and don't talk. I mean, Fiona will tell you anyway, but when I go into a room full of people, that's it, bang, I shut down.
But you found a natural icebreaker.
But here, I realized that, sort of, if I turn it round now, so instead of me going to the ladies are actually coming to me. I can then talk to them. I also then did that later on in life as well, because when I joined a networking organization, you had to go into the meeting room, meet all the people, chat to them and network, obviously, because it's talking. But I used to get there at 6:15 in the morning, be the first one there. And I then said, all these people are now coming to meet me.
Right.
And I was able to get round that barrier and then say, let's turn it round. And that's what I found in my life, is you've got to turn things around and look at things to try and make them fit you and for you.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's a good lesson. And people don't often stand back and assess themselves and how they can make something more relevant to them.
No. So I decided, look, I like figures, because one of the things that happened when I was sort of treasurer is that the curate then said to me, well, here's how you do a bank reconciliation. Here's what our accounts are about, because he used to do the local parish accounts.
Right.
Well, he taught me a bit about accounts. So I had this background knowledge here going on in my head about accounts anyway. I'd got my head turned by medicine and got nowhere, and said, well, this accounts looks very interesting, all these numbers, because I always have had an interest in numbers. And so I applied to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and they wrote back to me. In those days, unfortunately, it was snail mail. They wrote back to me and said, yes, you're suitable. All you have to do is find somebody to be articled to. So luckily, 2 days later, it was a little 2-liner in the Daily Telegraph. I used to do the Daily Telegraph crossword to try and keep my English up, by the way. But it took me 4 attempts to pass English at junior certificate level. Hence, that's why I did crosswords and other things to try and improve my English.
Yeah, and they're great. They're a great way of improving your English.
Yes, they are. I've got puzzles in there as well when you've got anagrams and things like this. And I found I used to enjoy doing those puzzles and anagrams.
Yeah. So anyway, you had this small organization that contacted you to say, yes, you're potential candidate.
Yeah, Seamus. It was Seamus who was there, who interviewed me at the firm and said, yes, we're looking for article clerks. And I got the job. So here I was. I'd come down from £20 a week as a painter's labourer to £12 a week working for government, and now £9 a week working in the middle of Mayfair.
There's something wrong with this picture, Michael, as you can imagine, for a lot of people.
Yeah, but then you learn that other word that's called trade-off. That sometimes in life you've got to do things that perhaps you think either below you or different or not for you, but then can reach a different output that you're trying to get to. Because I realized then that as a chartered accountant, I would then be able to outstrip in earnings anybody who was then as a painter's labourer.
Yeah.
So you realize that there's a trade-off. So I did come down to my £9 a week, but I was, for whatever reason, I found I naturally fell into it. I was naturally able to do all the work, to do the bank reconciliations. I was doing them a lot quicker, more efficiently than other people. And within 6 months, I was the senior article clerk in the practice and given 1 million turnover group audits to do. We're talking 1969 now.
Yeah, which was a huge amount of money back then.
So, and I was given those to do. But what I also loved as well is that the small practice then believed in service and making sure that you understood and the accounts. It wasn't like modern days when you're on a computer system, you put a figure in and suddenly it's gone. It's off into the accounts. Who knows where it's gone? Then had to learn where it all went. They didn't even have PCs. We didn't have electronic calculators in those days. And so I then was given an understanding of the books because the partners sat down with you and said, here's a box of papers. We've got to produce a set of accounts. And they quickly showed how it all fitted together.
Right.
So I'm able to understand how all the figures fit together, the debits, the credits, the assets, the liabilities, the incomes, expenditures, etc. And I found that naturally came to my brain, that my brain actually could assimilate that and work that.
That's a very good lesson to get. As you said, today figures are put into a computer, but now you saw exactly where they went.
Yes. And I could then understand, it's like if we take modern day, you see an invoice, say from something like the old Viking, the computer would automatically put that to stationery. Mm-hmm. But you buy a desk from them. And what happens is the desk gets posted to stationery. It shouldn't. It should get posted to a fixed asset. It's because people have lost the idea of thought. They don't think where the transactions go. All they're interested in is, I've got 10 entries, let me just bash through them, wham, they're through the system. That's just my take on how things are now anyway.
Right. So what happened then? You were going to move on in terms
of... Yes, I then became a chartered accountant. I had to break my articles because my first wife became very ill, and she sort of looking after, and so she went back up north, and therefore to join her, I had to articles and join another firm. So I then, there was a firm in Richmond in Yorkshire advertising they wanted a fully qualified accountant for their practice. I applied for the job and got it. And they actually happened to pay me the same as a fully qualified accountant as well.
Fantastic.
Because I was able to churn the work out. My predecessor, their largest client was a traveller who had then sort of gone into bingo halls, and through his business sense, he used to sign his name with a cross, but he had sense. Through his business sense, he was then able to build up a 32 bingo hall operation that was bigger than Mecca.
Wow.
Bingo halls. And he built that up, as I said, through his business sense, but this accountancy practice did all their accounts. My predecessor used to do like one bingo hall every couple of weeks. I used to do 3 bingo halls a week. Wow. To reduce the accounts out. So, it came to me naturally. Then the parent of the Richmond firm in Middlesbrough then said, look, we need somebody. Will you come across and work for us? I went to work for them, and they said, we offered something different. We give a bonus.
Oh, that sounds good.
We work out the fees that you've billed, less an ever increasing amount for expenses and our profits. If the figure is bigger than last time, we'll give you a bonus. So I ended up getting about 50, 60% of my annual salary as a bonus. Hence,
great.
An article clerk, I could afford sort of a 3-bedroom, 3-story townhouse on article clerks or newly qualified wages. But that also then puts barriers in your way as well sometimes, because I decided after I'd qualified as an accountant what I want to do. Where do I go? There's a choice when you're an accountant. There's different forms of accountants. You can be an auditor ticking things, you can be finance manager producing the numbers, or you can be sort of like a consultant that juggles all the numbers, makes 1 + 1 = 3. So I decided to go to a large firm, and I went, PriceWaterhouse said they couldn't take me on in England because my salary was too big.
Right, okay.
How about South Africa? I said, yeah, why not? Because I'd been out previously in Africa before. My dad worked for Crown Agents building schools in Tanganyika, which is now Tanzania. So, Africa didn't scare me at all. So I went out to Africa, went out with PriceWaterhouse. But then one of the things I then learned at these large practices is that sometimes they have the focus on their own numbers rather than the client.
Ah.
They gave me their largest client to do the audit of, which I did. The client had never had any letters or anything to say there was things wrong with the organization in the past. I have a 19-page management letter.
Oh dear.
Me being me, because for some reason, understanding and knowing these things, I could see where things were wrong. I had a natural feel for where things were. And the partner then said to me, "I'm very sorry, but we can't issue that to the client," threw my file in the bin, and then said, "Can I start again?"
Mm-hmm.
And so I then said, "No, unfortunately, my sort of Victorian Quaker background from my dad, that isn't the thing I do." And I then left PriceWaterhouse. I paid them back my settling in allowance, paid them back my airfares. And lo and behold, KPMG were looking for an audit manager.
Oh,
so
okay.
Me being me, here I am, a newly qualified accountant. And I applied for the position as audit manager and I got it. So I found through my life that what happens is that for whatever reason, I'm able to get positions that are bigger than I think I can get. As an article clerk, I got that position as a full-time accountant. Here I am now a full-time accountant with the 1 year qualifying. I get a position as an audit manager.
Wow.
That taught me that, you can go after things. You can go after bigger things. Why be restricted by how people perceive you? If you want to go after the job or go after the position, believe in it and do it. And that's what I did.
Yeah, the ability to say yes, which so many people lack the confidence in doing.
Yeah, one thing, I'm a very positive person. I try to turn things around into the positive, everything, to look at on the positive side of things. I don't say no problem because that's two words, no and problem. It's okay, that's fine. That'll do, as we say in Yorkshire. But, I then became an audit manager with KPMG, but they then didn't know what to do with me because of my different thinking.
Right.
I approached things and looked at things. So they sent me to Lesotho for 6 months.
Right. Lesotho, as you do.
As you do.
And how did you find that?
Well, they just bought a practice in Lesotho and they needed it to be KPMGized. And they thought I was the person to do it. And I went there. And one of the things I picked up on was a 2 million fraud from one of the clients.
A nice one.
So, the clients then began to love KPMG because, they were actually doing something different because the previous auditor was what I would call a village auditor. Nothing against village auditors. But he used to go in there and say, "Hello, hi, how are you? How's things? Okay, bye. Where do I sign? Thanks, gone."
Yeah.
Whereas when I went there, I tried to understand what the business was all about. They're making ceramics. Well, how do they do that? What's involved? What's going on? And being that involved in it as well, I then said, well, let me learn a bit about that, about production. Because when I'm doing cost accounting or looking at costs, I need to know what's happening actually in the operations.
And that's a very important lesson, I think, for most people. You need to look under the bonnet of your own organization and know what goes on.
Yes, it's like under the bonnet of a car. You need to know what's going on under there. You don't just look at it and say it looks fine. You check the oil, the water, the antifreeze, everything. You need to understand these things and understand why you're looking at them and checking them. And there was 13 companies in this group in Lesotho, and they wondered why they were making a loss. One of the basic things was they produced their accounts 1 year after the year end.
All right. Wow. Okay.
When you're making decisions on old information, historic information, the world has moved on.
Yes, it certainly has. And again, that's another lesson that the old information is old information and has very little value.
Yes, it does. And you've got to have the most up-to-date information to make the best decision. And the client then approached me and said, did I want to come and head up their accounting function to look after all these 13 subsidiaries? And I said, well, I've had a go at the large international practice with KPMG. It was a bit boring, too much paperwork, filling in things. That didn't excite my brain. Let me look and see what happens now when I go out into industry. And I went out into industry, joined them. They had manufacturing companies. They had the obligatory Mercedes garage because all the
Right. Okay. Tell us about that.
all the government ministers had Mercedes. So obviously you needed to have a garage to service them for them. They had a retail record shop. They had a manufacturing jeweler. They had joinery. They had a quarry. So they had lots of different, and they had indigenous things where they used to do mohair weaving and they used to do pottery. They used to sell to tourists and people.
Fantastic. All right, so you had to get your head around all of these.
Yeah, but then I got my head around it and I got an understanding then of what cost accounting is all about. But also as well in that, I then had to train up all the 13 people who were looking after the books in this. And I found I enjoyed doing that. And obviously the students enjoyed me sort of training them up and making them understanding, because the university in Lesotho then approached me and said, did I want to lecture for them? They said, but the lecturing is in production management. And I said, yeah, it'd be great, because that'll then give me a better understanding of what cost accounting is all about when I know sort of the things on the operational side.
Yeah, so it's practical stuff.
Yes, I jumped at the opportunity, to grow into that and say, well, what's it all about? Let me understand this. So I then went as a lecturer at university. Later on the next year, they did ask me to do financial accounting as well.
Well, I would hope they'd at least come back to that.
Yeah, but, and I must say that no pupils failed my course at all. So I've been doing something right. And what happened was the Swiss came in and they provided funding and they changed that sort of accounting of me doing after hours at the office. That's now the Accounting Institute in Lesotho.
Well, we're going to finish that story there. That brings us to the end of part one of our interview with Michael Armitage. What a fascinating first part. I'm looking forward to the second piece, which will follow on next week. So don't forget to join us again next week for part two of this fascinating story, where we'll follow up and see where this brought Michael Armitage to his life and career and the lessons that came from it. Thanks also to Sam on sound. And don't forget to join me, Alec Drew, again next week at the same time, 12:30. 103.2 Dublin City FM for another edition of You and Your Business.